that section, if you go to the section that we were in, the second paragraph at the last or second to last line, it says, nor is praying Monday's current noon prayer behind one making up Thursday's noon prayer valid. It should say, nor is praying Monday's make up noon prayer behind one making up Thursday's noon prayer valid. Instead of saying current, it should say make up in that line. So in the translation it was given correctly, but just to make sure you change the verbiage in the book so it reflects what is in the original.
بسم الله والحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه.
We start with the name of Allah. We praise Him for the endowments that He bestowed upon us. We ask Allah to raise the rank of our Prophet Muhammad and his noble companions and believing relatives, and to protect his nation from that which He fears for them on the day of judgment.
قال المؤلف رحمه الله: ويجوز لمن صلى الفريضة منفردا أن يعيد مع جماعة اثنين فصاعدا إلا مع إمام راتب مؤتما غير إمام. من صلى الفريضة منفردا يجوز له أن يعيد مع جماعة، بل ويندب ذلك، ليس فقط يجوز لكن ليس في كل الصلوات. في المغرب لا تعاد، وفي العشاء إن صلى الوتر لا تعاد.
The author, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, it is permissible for whoever prayed the obligatory prayer individually to repeat it in a congregation of two or more, except with a salaried imam following another imam. If one prays the prayer, the obligatory prayer alone, it is recommended for him, if he finds a congregational prayer, to pray again in congregation. It's permissible and it is recommended, except for the Maghrib prayer. He does not repeat the prayer. And the Isha prayer if he already prayed Witr.
المغرب لما لا تعاد إن صلاها منفردا ليس له أن يعيدها جماعة. لماذا؟ لأن المغرب 3 ركعات، وإن صلى منفردا وأعاد مع جماعة لا تكون كلتاهما فرض، لأنه لا فرضين للمغرب إنما فرض واحد، فتكون إحداهما صلاته الفريضة والأخرى نافلة. وقلنا أن النافلة لا تصلى وترا، والمغرب وتر 3 ركعات.
So we said that an exception to this is Maghrib. He is not permitted to repeat the Maghrib prayer in congregation after he already prayed it individually. Why? Because the Maghrib prayer is 3 rak'ahs. And if he were to have prayed individually, the obligation, if he prayed the Maghrib prayer individually, and then he repeated it in congregation, then one of the 2 prayers is the obligation was fulfilled, and the other one would be recommended originally. And because there would not be 2 obligatory Maghrib prayers performed within the same time by this person. And we mentioned that the optional prayer is not to be prayed as an odd number of rak'ahs. So according to this, he would not be able to pray the Maghrib prayer in congregation after he already prayed it individually.
التنفل لا يكون إلا ب2 أو 4 وهكذا، لا يكون إما 2 أو 4، لا يكون 3 ركعات النافلة. فهذه المعادة إن كان نوى بالأولى الفريضة هذه تكون نافلة، والنافلة لا تصلى 3، لأجل هذا المغرب لا تعاد.
Because the optional prayer is not done as an odd number of cycles, rather it is done as an even number. And so if he were to have repeated the Maghrib prayer in congregation after he already prayed it individually, then when he would have prayed it in congregation, it would be considered as an optional prayer. However, it would be an odd number of cycles, and this would not be valid. So this is why they said that for the Maghrib prayer, he does not repeat it in congregation if he already prayed it individually.
لأجل هذا يقولون من كان يصلي نافلة مثلا ركعتين فسهى فصلى ثالثة إن تذكر بعد أن صلى الثالثة بعد أن عقد الثالثة قالوا لا يسلم بل يأتي برابعة حتى لا يسلم نافلة من وتر.
And this is why they said that if one was praying an optional prayer, so after he prayed 2 rak'ahs, he accidentally went into the 3rd rak'ah. Forgetfully, he initiated the 3rd rak'ah. They said in this case, he wouldn't continue and make salam as he is. Rather, he would continue to a 4th rak'ah, so that the prayer, this optional prayer, would not occur as an odd number of rak'ahs. Rather, it would be performed as an even number of rak'ahs, of cycles.
أما العشاء إن صلاها منفردا ثم رأى جماعة يصلون عشاء إن لم يكن صلى الوتر له أن يعيد معهم ويندب ذلك.
As for Isha, if he already prayed it individually and then he saw a congregation afterwards praying Isha, it is permissible for him to pray Isha behind them. Rather, it is recommended as long as he has not yet prayed the Witr prayer.
أما إن صلى الوتر بعد العشاء فلا يعيد.
However, if he prayed the Witr prayer after he prayed Isha individually, then he would not repeat the Isha prayer.
لماذا؟ العشاء 4 ركعات لأنهم قالوا إن أعاد العشاء وأعاد الوتر بعده حتى يكون آخر صلاته وترا يكون خالف الحديث لا وتران في ليلة فيكون صلى وترين.
Why did they mention this? Because the Isha, as you know, which is 4 rak'ahs, if he were to have prayed Isha and then he prayed Witr, and then afterwards he saw a congregational prayer, so he prayed Isha with them. Afterwards he would pray Witr, so that the last prayer that he prays is the Witr prayer. But this would conflict with the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that there are no 2 witrs in one night. That 2 witr prayers cannot be prayed in one night.
فإن أراد أن يعيد العشاء ويصلي الوتر بعد العشاء مرة ثانية خالف هذا الحديث.
So if he wanted to repeat the Isha prayer in congregation after he prayed it individually, and then afterwards, and he, as we said, he already prayed Witr, and then afterwards to pray Witr again, then he would be contradicting, or he would be not contradicting. He would be opposing, if you want, this hadith. Yani he would not be implementing what came in the hadith.
طيب إن قال أصلي العشاء أعيد العشاء ولا أعيد الوتر مرة ثانية يكون خالف الحديث الثاني اجعلوا آخر صلاتكم وترا.
And if he said, okay, I don't want to repeat both Isha and Witr, he prayed Isha and Witr, he says, I'll just repeat the Isha and I won't repeat the Witr as well, then here he would be opposing, or he would not be in compliance with the other hadith that was narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he said, make the last prayer that you pray the Witr prayer.
فهو يكون هذا أعاد العشاء وكانت آخر صلاته لم تكن آخر صلاته وترا إن أعاد العشاء ولم يعد الوتر. فلأجل هذا لا يعيد العشاء إن صلاها منفردا وأوتر. أما إن صلاها منفردا ولم يوتر يندب.
And this is why if he prayed Isha and prayed Witr afterwards, he prayed Isha individually and prayed Witr afterwards, he would not repeat the Isha prayer. However, when it comes to him, if he prayed the Isha prayer individually and he did not pray Witr after it, then it is permissible and recommended for him to repeat the Isha prayer following a congregational prayer.
طيب ما سوى المغرب والعشاء إن أوتر قلنا يندب إن صلى منفردا يندب أن يعيد في جماعة. كيف يعيد في جماعة؟ مأموما لا إماما، مؤتما لا إماما.
We said other than Maghrib and Isha with the details that we mentioned, one, it is permissible for one to repeat the prayer in congregation after he already prayed it individually. How would this be done? This would be done him praying them in congregation as a follower, not as an imam.
لماذا؟ لأن المعادة قلنا إن صلى الأولى بنية الفرضية فالمعادة تكون نافلة، والمفترض مر معنا في الدرس السابق المفترض لا يأتم بالمتنفل، وهذا المعيد متنفل، وإن نوى الظهر أو نوى العصر أو نوى العشاء إن لم يوتر تعتبر صلاته هذه نافلة لأنه نوى بالأولى الفرض، فالمفترض لا يأتم بالمتنفل. لأجل هذا إن أعاد يعيد مؤتما لا مأموما.
Why is this the case?
لا إماما.
Why is this the case that he can repeat the prayer in congregation as an imam, as a follower, but not as an imam? Because as we said, when he repeats this prayer that he already prayed individually, he repeats it in congregation. When he repeats it in congregational prayer, it is now considered optional in regards to him. And we mentioned also that the one who is praying an obligation, it is not valid for him to pray behind the one who is praying an optional prayer. So had he been an imam for this repeated congregational prayer, then he would be considered to be praying an optional prayer. And so if there are those who follow him who are praying this prayer as an obligation, it would not be valid for them to pray behind him because he is praying an optional and they are praying an obligation, and the one who is praying an obligatory prayer cannot follow the one who is praying an optional prayer. This is why they said that this person who repeats the prayer in congregation must do so as a follower, because it is valid for the one who prays an optional prayer to pray behind the one who prays an obligatory prayer.
واضح؟
Is this clear?
نعيد. في التي يندب أن تعاد كما ذكرنا المغرب لا والعشاء إن أوتر لا. في الصلوات التي يندب أن تعاد لمن صلاها منفردا يندب له أن يعيد جماعة إن رأى جماعة يقتدي بهم، لكن إن أعاد يعيد مؤتما لا إماما.
So as we said, it is recommended for him to, if he prayed individually already, to repeat that prayer in congregation, except for Maghrib and Isha if he already prayed the Witr prayer. And if he were to find a congregation when he repeats the prayer, he would repeat it as a follower and not as an imam.
نحن ماذا قلنا؟ قلنا يندب له أن يعيد، فإذا المعادة مندوبة ليست واجبة.
What did we say? We said that repeating the prayer in this context is recommended, so it is not an obligatory matter.
فإذا كانت مندوبة مر معنا في الدرس السابق أن المفترض لا يقتدي بما يصلي صلاة مندوبة، إنما يقتدي بما يصلي فرض فقط.
So if it is recommended, and we mentioned the previous lesson that the one who is praying an obligatory prayer does not pray behind the one who is praying an optional prayer, and so this is why we said that the one who is repeating the congregational prayer, the one who is repeating the prayer in congregation, would not do so as an imam.
قال إلا مع إمام راتب أيضا مؤتما غير إمام. الإمام الراتب هو الذي رتب لأن يكون إماما في مسجد أو جامع، ليس شرطا فيه أن يكون بأجرة، إنما هو أمره مرتب مع أهل تلك المحلة أو أهل تلك القرية أن يكون إمامهم، فهو الذي يؤم كل الفرائض كل الصلوات، هذا الإمام الراتب. مع هذا مع الإمام الراتب يندب لمن صلى منفردا أن يعيد معه أيضا، لكن مؤتما لا إمام، ولو كان الإمام الراتب وحده. قلنا للذي صلى منفردا يندب له أن يعيد في جماعة. ما معنى في جماعة؟ يعني في جماعة قائمة بغيره، ليس هو أحدها هو وواحد فقط، يوجد جماعة قائمة إمام ومأموم أو مأمومون. إن كانت الجماعة قائمة بغيره يندب له أن يعيد معهم. فإذا كان لا يوجد جماعة قائمة إلا واحد يصلي، إن كان إماما راتبا له أن يعيد معه، إن لم يكن إماما راتبا ليس له أن يعيد معه، لأن الواحد ليس جماعة، وهو يندب له أن يعيد مع جماعة.
So we said that and by this what is mentioned in the book would be clarified, the translation. It seems like it is off from what the Shaykh is mentioning, so we can correct that inshaAllah. So we said that the one who already prayed individually, it is recommended for him, if he finds a congregational prayer ongoing, to follow that congregational prayer, to pray in congregation with them. That's if there's a congregational prayer that he finds, he would follow that congregation. And so he would do so. But if he does not find a congregation, rather he finds an imam, it says a salaried imam. It's not a condition that the imam receives a salary. Rather what is meant is that this imam is an imam whom they selected. It is arranged that he is the one who leads the prayers in this mosque. This is what is meant, that he is arranged, the people of that area, they arrange that this person is the one who is the imam in this mosque. Then if he does not find a jama'ah, then he is allowed to repeat the prayer, praying behind this one imam who was arranged to be the leader of that mosque, for example.
واضح؟ يعني يعيد فقط مع جماعة قائمة، ليس مع واحد. الواحد ليس جماعة، ولو كان مأموما غير إمام لا يعيد مع واحد، إنما مع جماعة قائمة، إلا إذا كان هذا الواحد إماما راتبا فحكمه حكم الجماعة.
And so, as we said, if this person wants to repeat the prayer, and he would repeat the prayer if he finds another congregation that is ongoing. For example, he finds an imam and there are people who are following him, or someone who is following him. So there's already a congregational praying that is ongoing. Here he can repeat this prayer that he already prayed individually with this congregation, and he would follow them. He would be a follower in this case. And he would not pray behind only one person. If he finds one person, he wouldn't repeat the prayer following only one person. Rather, he follows a congregational prayer that is already ongoing. Unless this one person that he is following for the repeat prayer is an imam who was arranged by the people of the area to be the imam of this mosque, for example. Then in this case, he can repeat the prayer following this one person, this one imam, because this one imam would have the judgment of the congregation.
وبعضهم زاد فقال حتى مع هذا الإمام الراتب يصح له ويندب له أن يعيد معه إن كان في مسجده، في المسجد الذي هو مرتب لأن يصلي فيه إماما. أما لو اجتمع مع الإمام الراتب في البيت مثلا ليس له أن يعيد معه وحده، صار حكمه كحكم أفراد الناس. هو إمام راتب في مسجده، هناك حكمه كحكم الجماعة وليس في خارج مسجده.
And some of them said that this is the case if he is in his mosque, the mosque where this person is established as the imam of this mosque. This is when it applies. And they said that if it was done, for example, he met him in his house, then in this case it would not have the same judgment. He would not be able to pray the prayer as a repeat prayer in congregation just behind this one Imam, because he would no longer have that judgment outside the mosque.
هو حكمه حكم الجماعة في مسجده الإمام الراتب.
This Imam that's known as Al-Imam al-Ratib, this Imam who is established as the Imam of this mosque, has this judgment. He has the judgment of congregation when he's in his mosque, in the mosque.
بدأنا الآن في الأشياء التي ليس المذهب المالكي فيها أسهل من الشافعي. في الأول كنتم تقولون ما شاء الله هذا أسهل، ما شاء الله هذا أسهل. الآن تغير الحال.
MashaAllah, now we are speaking about judgments that are not easier in the Maliki madhab than in the Shafi'i madhab, because when we first started, many of the things that we mentioned were easier according to the Malikis than the Shafi'is.
الآن تقولون نرجع للشافعي.
Now you might be saying to yourself, let's go back to Shafi'i.
قال ولو تقدم المأموم على إمامه في ركوع مثلا ولم يرفع رأسه من الركوع حتى ركع الإمام ورفع فرفع معه أو بعده أو قبله ارتكب حراما، هذه ليست مكروها، ارتكب حراما إن تعمد ذلك وصلاته صحيحة. إن تقدم المأموم على الإمام في ركوع مثلا، يعني قبل أن يركع الإمام ركع المأموم، ولو لم يرفع بعد من الركوع فقد ارتكب حراما إن تعمد ذلك.
If the follower preceded his Imam in bowing, for example, and did not lift his head from bowing until the Imam bowed and raised his head from bowing, then he raised his head with him or after him or before him, he committed an unlawful matter. It says a disliked matter, it should say an unlawful matter.
لا سيأتي البطلان. ولا تبطل صلاته، قلنا صلاته صحيحة. إن ركع المأموم قبل أن يرفع، مجرد نزل للركوع والإمام ما زال واقفا، إن تعمد ذلك فقد ارتكب حراما، لكن إلى هذا الحد صلاته ما زالت صحيحة لم تبطل.
So if the Imam is still standing and the follower made ruku', he preceded his Imam, he went ahead of his Imam and he made ruku' and his head and he's still in the position of ar-ruku', and he has not yet raised his head from the position of ar-ruku'. Up to here he has fallen into a forbidden matter. He has committed a sin. Up to here, yet, however, his prayer is not yet invalidated.
وعند الشافعي إلى هذا الحد مكروه ليس حراما.
And according to the Shafi'i, up to this point it is disliked and not forbidden.
طيب نحن نتكلم الآن في المالكي، إن ركع ولم يرفع بعد والإمام ما زال واقفا ارتكب حراما ولم تبطل صلاته.
So if he made ruku' and the Imam is still standing, he made ruku' but he did not yet raise his head from the position of ruku', from the bowing position, he's still in ar-ruku'. Up to here, this follower has committed a sin, however his prayer is not yet invalidated.
فإن انتظر الإمام في الركوع حتى ركع الإمام صلاته صحيحة، ثم إما أن يرفع مع الإمام فيكون ارتكب مكروها كما ذكرنا قبلا، أو رفع بعد الإمام، هذا الصواب، أو رفع أيضا قبله. إن رفع معه ارتكب مكروها، إن رفع قبله ارتكب حراما ثانيا لأنه أيضا سبقه، إن رفع بعده هذا هو المطلوب.
So when he reaches this bowing position, the follower, and the Imam is still standing, as we said, he committed a sin up to here. And if he does not raise his head until after the Imam reaches the bowing position, then there are three cases that might occur here as well. And there are three cases here that might occur. Either he raises his head before the Imam raises his head. So again, we said he did not raise his head before the Imam bowed. The Imam bowed, he waited for the Imam to bow. Before the follower raised his head, he made sure that the Imam is already bowing. Now at this point, either the follower raises his head before the Imam, or raises his head with the Imam, or raises his head after the Imam raises his head. So if he raises his head with the Imam, then here he would have committed a disliked matter, as we mentioned previously, because he is simultaneous with his Imam, and in addition to what he did previously, which was sinful. Or he does it ahead of the Imam, and so in this case he would have committed a second forbidden matter. He would be sinful for this as well, because first he bowed before the Imam, and now he is lifting his head, raising his head before the Imam. So he committed two forbidden matters, two prohibitions. Or he would raise his head after the Imam raises his head, and this is what he should do in this case.
قال وإلا بأن رفع قبل ركوع الإمام فقد بطلت إن تعمد ذلك. قلنا أنه إن ركع وانتظره في الركوع، ركع قبله وانتظره في الركوع، ارتكب حراما لكن لم تفسد صلاته. فإن بدأ بالرفع من الركوع والإمام ما زال قائما هنا فسدت صلاته.
He said otherwise, by raising up from bowing before the Imam's bowing, his prayer is invalidated if done while remembering. So if the follower, as we said, he made ruku' ahead of the Imam is still standing and the follower made ruku', then this follower would have fallen into a sin. Up to here, his prayer is still valid. But as soon as he starts raising his head from the bowing position while his Imam is still standing, then at this point his prayer would be invalidated.
وكذا يحرم التأخر عنه بركن فعلي، يعني كما لا يجوز التقدم عليه كذلك لا يجوز التأخر عنه بركن فعلي.
Likewise, lagging behind him by one integral of action is prohibited. Just as it is forbidden for the follower to precede the Imam by one integral of action, it is also forbidden for the follower to lag behind the Imam by one integral of action.
وليس قراءة الفاتحة عذرا لأن الفاتحة عندهم لا تجب على المأمومين.
And reciting the Fatiha is not considered an excuse, because according to them, the follower is merely it is only recommended.
لا تجب على المأمومين.
Because reciting the Fatiha is not obligatory for the follower.
فلو فات المؤتم الركوع مع الإمام فإن كان في غير أولى المأموم يتبعه بأن يركع ويرفع ويسجد خلفه ما لم يرفع الإمام رأسه من السجود الثاني. فإن رفع قبل أن يسجد معه فاتته تلك الركعة ولحق إمامه فيما هو فيه ويأتي بركعة بعد سلام إمامه.
Now the author said, if the follower missed unison with the Imam in the bowing, and he mentions if the follower missed bowing with the Imam and the follower was in other than the first cycle of his prayer, he follows the Imam by bowing, raising from bowing and prostrating behind him, as long as the Imam did not raise his head from the second prostration. If the Imam raises his head before the follower prostrates with him, then this cycle is not counted for him. This rak'ah is not counted for him. He abandons his order and he would be in unison with his Imam in the Imam's current position, and he would perform a cycle, a rak'ah, after the salam of the Imam.
ما معنى ذلك؟ معناه أنه إن ركع الإمام والمأموم ما زال واقفا إن كان لغير عذر لا يجوز، وليس من الأعذار قراءة الفاتحة.
What does this mean? This means that if the Imam made ruku' and the follower remains standing and he does not bow after his Imam, then he would be sinful, and reciting the Fatiha is not considered an excuse.
إذن ما هي الأعذار؟ ازدحام مثلا، أراد أن يركع بسبب ازدحام الناس ما استطاع أن ينزل للركوع، فانتظر حتى يرتفع بعضهم لينزل، أو نعاس، أو سهى كان يفكر بشيء ما انتبه أن الإمام ركع واعتدل.
What are excuses that are considered here? For example, if he did so due to there was crowding of the people, so he was not able to bow after the Imam bowed, then this is an excuse. He had to wait for certain people to stand back up so that he can bow. This is an excuse. Or sleepiness, or forgetfulness, he forgot. These are considered excuses.
سهى يعني كان يفكر في شيء ما لم ينتبه أن الإمام ركع حتى يركع معه، ما انتبه إلا بعد أن رفع من الركوع مثلا.
What we mean by forgetfulness is he did not pay attention that the Imam has made ruku'. He was maybe thinking about something else and did not notice that the Imam has already made ruku'. So he didn't notice until after the Imam raised his head from the position of ar-ruku'. Then this is an excuse.
ماذا يفعل؟ هذا يلحقه فيما هو فيه، لكن يمكنه أن يستدرك الركعة طالما لم يرفع الإمام رأسه من السجود الثاني وليس من الركوع. يعني إن اعتدل الإمام حتى انتبه هو أنه ما زال لم يركع، بدأ بالركوع، الإمام وصل للسجود، اعتدل الإمام، جلس بين السجدتين وسجد السجدة الثانية، إن لحقه وسجد معه في السجدة الثانية صحت له هذه الركعة. أما إن لم يلحقه إلى أن وصل إليه إلى أن نزل، كان الإمام بدأ يرفع من السجدة الثانية، ماذا يفعل؟ يقول هذه الركعة فسدت علي، ولا يسجدها بعد رفع الإمام، بل يترك متابعة ترتيب نفسه ويلحق ترتيب الإمام، وعليه قضاء هذه الركعة بعد سلام الإمام.
So in this case, what does this person do who did not notice that the Imam has performed ruku' until after the Imam has raised his head from the bowing position from ar-ruku'? What does the follower do in this case? He would catch up with his Imam. As long as the Imam did not lift his head, did not raise his head from the second sujood, this rak'ah would count for this follower as long as he is in unison with the Imam by the time the Imam is in the second prostration. So if the Imam raises his head before the follower reaches the Imam in the second prostration, then this rak'ah would be cancelled for this follower, and he would strive to be in unison with the Imam at this point, and he would repeat a rak'ah. He would perform a rak'ah after the salam of his Imam.
واضح؟ يعني هو يحاول أن يلحقه طالما لم يرفع الإمام رأسه من السجود الثاني، إن وصل إليه وسجد معه حسبت له الركعة. إن بدأ بالإمام بالرفع قبل أن يصل هو للسجود لا يكمل السجود، بل ينظر ماذا سيفعل الإمام. يجلس معه، سيقوم للتالية يقوم معه، وهذه الركعة فاتته ما استطاع استدراكها، يأتي بركعة بعد سلام إمامه على صفة المتروكة. يعني إن كان هذا حصل معه في الأولى من العشاء أو من المغرب، بعد سلام الإمام سيقضيها. كيف يقضيها؟ كما فاتته، هو يعتبرها أولى، يعتبر نفسه قاضيا للأولى، ولا تتحول ركعاته كالمنفرد، بل إن فاتته جهرية لما يأتي بها جهرية، إن فاتته مع السورة لما يأتي بها مع السورة.
So as we said, if the person lagged behind his Imam, what he does is he would catch up with the Imam so that he would be in unison with the Imam. And as long as he is in unison with the Imam, by the time the Imam is in his second prostration, then this rak'ah is counted for this follower. However, if the Imam starts raising his head, lifting his head from the second prostration, and the follower has not yet reached the second prostration, then the follower does not strive to perform this prostration. Rather, he would immediately try to be in unison with the Imam. So if the Imam went back up to sitting, he would sit and he wouldn't prostrate. If the Imam went up to standing, he would stand and he would not go to that prostration, because the Imam has already lifted his head from that second prostration. And he would need to make up that rak'ah that he missed because of this. And what would happen is it would be this rak'ah that he performs after the salam of the Imam would be performed as a make-up for the rak'ah that he missed. And it is not the case that the number of the rak'ahs, it's not the same case as that they would just be adjusted accordingly, that he would now say this is, when he does that last rak'ah, he would say this is my fourth rak'ah now. It would be counted as a make-up for the rak'ah that was cancelled as a result of him not being in unison with the Imam when the Imam was in the second prostration. So what he does in this case, for example, if the situation was Isha prayer, the first rak'ah of the Isha prayer where this happened with the follower, that he was not in unison with the Imam by the time the Imam was in the second prostration. Rather, the Imam raised his head from the second prostration before the follower reached the Imam in the second prostration. In this case, and this happened during the first rak'ah, in this case, after the salam of the Imam, the follower would pray an additional rak'ah, and it would be counted as a make-up for the first rak'ah. So if the first rak'ah was prayed loudly, as is the case for the Isha prayer, he would pray it loudly, and the recitation of Al-Fatiha and that surah. And it's prayed with an additional surah, as is the case for the first two rak'ahs. He would do so for this rak'ah that he is now making up, because it is considered as a make-up for the first rak'ah. And it is not just merely readjusting the number rak'ah that he is in now.
يعني لا يقول بعد سلام الإمام إن حصل معه هذا في الركعة الأولى هذه ما صحت له، لكن صلى مع الإمام ثلاثا، بعدما يسلم الإمام هو صحت له 3 ركعات، فعلى حسب ترتيب نفسه بقيت عليه الأخيرة الرابعة، لكن هذه بالنسبة له هي قضاء للأولى، لأجل هذا يقضيها على ما فاتته، على صفة التي فاتته.
So if this were to occur with the person in the first rak'ah, then that rak'ah, as we said, would be cancelled, would be invalidated. And so he would have prayed in reality 3 rak'ahs. By the time the Imam makes salam, he would have prayed 3 rak'ahs with the Imam. Now, regarding this person who is following the Imam, this rak'ah that he now does after the salam of the Imam, according to his own order, is the 4th rak'ah. But in reality, it's considered a make-up for the first rak'ah. It is a make-up for the first rak'ah during which this matter happened, for the rak'ah that he invalidated. So it would be considered as a make-up for that rak'ah, for the first rak'ah, in accordance to the way that first rak'ah is prayed.
فلأجل هذا والفاتحة والسورة من الأقوال، فعندهم في الأقوال يقضي ولا يبني، لا يكمل على ما سبق، إنما يقضي. القراءة الفاتحة والسورة من أركان الصلاة القولية، وفي الأقوال عندهم يقضي ما فاته على الصورة التي فاتته، ولا يبني على ما سواها كالأفعال. الأفعال سيبني على ما سواها. لا، من أفعال الصلاة يعني القولية.
And so Al-Fatiha and the short surah that's recited after, these are from the verbal parts of the prayer. Yani the Fatiha is an integral, and the short surah is not an integral, but it's a part that's done in the prayer according to the details that we have mentioned. So in this case, what he does is he would repeat what he, this rak'ah when he prays it again, or this rak'ah that he prays after the salam of his Imam, these verbal parts of the prayer, he would
يقضيه على الصورة التي فاتته.
He would repeat them in accordance to what he missed during the first rak'ah of the prayer with the Imam.
لأجل هذا من فاته صلاة في السفر عند المالكية فأراد قضاءها في الحضر يقضيها قصرية لأنها فاتته قصرية.
This is why according to
ولو قضاها في الحضر.
This is why the one who missed the prayer, if someone was a traveler and he missed a prayer, according to the Malikis, if someone missed a prayer while he was a traveler, and afterwards he is no longer a traveler, he is now a resident, or he returned to his house, for example, he's no longer a traveler. When he makes it up as a shortened prayer, because when he missed it in the state that he was a traveler.
والعكس هكذا من أراد القضاء ما فاته في الحضر لكن كان في السفر لا يقضيها قصرا بل يقضيها كما فاتته حضرية ولو كان في السفر.
Likewise, the one who misses the prayer, the opposite is also true. If someone missed the prayer while he is not a traveler, he is a resident, and while he was a traveler, he wanted to make up that prayer, he makes that prayer he makes it up as a complete prayer, and he would not shorten that prayer.
طيب المؤلف ذكر إن كان هذا التأخر عن الإمام في غير أولى المأموم. الآن سيذكر إن كان هذا في أولى المأموم.
So we said that this matter,
ما ذكرناه من المثال من التأخر، قلنا إن ركع الإمام واعتدل وهو ما زال واقفا يمكن أن يستدرك الصلاة طالما لحق الإمام في السجود. هذا إذا كان هذا التأخر حصل ليس في أولى ركعات المأموم، في غير أولاه. إن ذكرنا في الركعة الأولى هذا يكون خطأ، ليس في الركعة الأولى للمأموم كالثانية مثلا.
Barakallahu fikum. So what we mentioned regarding this matter is if this occurs to the follower when he's not in the first rak'ah. Now the examples we gave, we might have mentioned the first rak'ah, so that was a mistake. يعني
المثال الذي ذكرناه بدل أن يكون فاته في أولى العشاء في الثانية.
So in the example that we gave where we said he missed being in unison with his Imam in the first rak'ah of al-Isha, that was the example we gave. Change that to the second rak'ah.
نعم لأن الأولى لها حكم آخر.
Why? Because when it occurs in the first rak'ah, it has its separate judgment that we will now, inshallah, explain.
فإن كان المأموم في أولاه وفاته الركوع مع الإمام فإن كان هذا التأخر لعذر من سهو ونعاس وازدحام ومرض صحت صلاته ولحق الإمام فيما هو فيه من غير أن يركع، فلا يجوز له الإتيان به بعد رفع الإمام وفاتته الركعة فيأتي بركعة بعد سلام الإمام، وإن كان لغير عذر ابتدأ صلاته. يقول ذاك التفصيل كله في غير أولى المأموم، لا نتكلم عن أولى الإمام، أولى المأموم. أما إذا كان في أولى المأموم دخل مع الإمام فركع الإمام، لأن لم يركع معه، لم يستدركه في الركوع، لم يصير في الركوع معه قبل أن يرفع الإمام، من الركوع، إما يكون هذا التأخير لعذر أو ليس لعذر، إما تأخر عنه لم يركع معه لعذر أم لا. إن كان لغير عذر فسدت صلاته، يبتدئ صلاته من أولها. إن لم يركع مع الإمام في أولاه للمأموم بغير عذر فسدت صلاته.
So what we mentioned previously is in regards to the follower if this matter occurs in other than the first rak'ah. Now we will speak about the judgment if this occurs to the follower in the first rak'ah. And we're speaking about the first rak'ah of the follower, not the first rak'ah of the imam. So the author said, if the follower was in his first cycle and he missed being in unison with the imam in bowing, if the lagging was due to an excuse, whether it was forgetting, somnolence, which means to be sleepy, crowding, or illness, his prayer is valid, and he abandons his order to be in unison with the imam in the imam's current position without bowing. It is not permissible for him to perform it after the imam raises up, and the cycle is not considered, it's not tallied, it's not counted. Thus he performs a cycle after the salam of the imam, and if this was done without an excuse, he lagged behind without an excuse, then he restarts his prayer. So as we said, if this was in the first rak'ah of the follower, and so the imam, he made ruku', and the follower was not in unison with the imam when the imam made ruku', meaning the imam started to raise his head from ruku' and the follower did not go into a ruku' yet, then in this case,
إن كان لغير عذر فسدت صلاته.
If this was without an excuse, then his prayer would be invalidated. And
كما ذكرنا وليس من العذر قراءة الفاتحة.
And as we said, reciting al-Fatiha is not considered an excuse.
إن كان لعذر كهذه الأعذار التي ذكرها أيضا لا يركع بعده. إن وجده بدأ بالرفع من الركوع لا يركع بعده، يتابعه فيما هو فيه، وهذه الركعة ما حسبت له.
And so if it was due to an excuse, he does not make ruku' after the imam has raised up from ar-ruku'. Rather, he strives to be in unison with the imam, meaning he catches up so that he would be in the position that the imam is in, and this rak'ah would not count for the follower, and he would need to make up this rak'ah after the salam of the imam.
أيضا على صورة التي سبقت.
Also in the same way that we described previously.
وهذا يمكن تصوره في أولى العشاء.
And this is easily يعني exemplified in the first rak'ah of al-Isha.
كالمثال الذي ذكرناه أولا، أليس قلنا في أولى العشاء فاته؟ في هذا يمكن أن يكون في الأولى.
So this is where it could be in the first rak'ah of al-Isha.
فإذا المأموم تفوته الركعة إن لم يركع مع الإمام في الأولى، في أولى المأموم، وتفوته الركعة إن لم يسجد معه في غير أولاه.
And so in the first rak'ah, the follower would miss the rak'ah if he is not in ar-ruku' with his imam before the imam raises his head from the position of ar-ruku'. And in other than the first rak'ah, he would miss the rak'ah if he is not with the imam in the second sujood before the imam raises his head from the second sujood.
على أي حال التأخر عنه لا يجوز. أما بالنسبة لصحة الصلاة وإفسادها هذا إلى هذا التفصيل، يعني التأخر إلى هذا الحد إن كان لغير عذر حرام، إن كان لعذر لا يحرم. أما فساد الركعة عدم لحاقها ولحاقها على التفصيل الذي ذكرنا.
So lagging behind the imam by one integral of action, as we said, it is forbidden. And whether or not it invalidates that rak'ah, this is in accordance to the details that we have mentioned. يعني lagging behind the imam without an excuse.
لما قال في أولى المأموم؟ لأن أولى المأموم قد لا تكون أولى الإمام، قد يكون دخل مسبوقا والإمام قد صلى ركعة أو ركعتين أو ثلاثة. النظر في هذا لأولى المأموم وليس لأولى الإمام.
Why did we say the first rak'ah of the follower? Because the first rak'ah of the follower, when he starts praying with the imam, it could be different than the rak'ah that the imam is in, because the follower might decide to join a congregational prayer after the imam has passed the first rak'ah. So this might be the first rak'ah for the follower, and for the imam it is not considered the first rak'ah. So in these judgments, we look at it for the follower. Is this the first rak'ah of the follower or not?
وسبحان الله والحمد لله رب العالمين والله سبحانه وتعالى أعلم. بهذا نكون أنهينا ما أردنا مطالعته معكم في هذه الدورة من الفقه. إن كان يوجد دروس غدا فتكون إن شاء الله كلها في التفسير.
By this, alhamdulillah, we have completed what we wanted to go over from the rules of jurisprudence during this dawrah. Inshallah, if there are lessons tomorrow as well, they will be all in the subject of tafsir.
بارك الله فيكم. نهلل ونصلي على النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام.